Welcome to Stories from the Center of the Universe, the podcast about the human experience.
Robyn D'Onofrio, welcome to the Center of the Universe.
Thank you for having me. I've never been here before.
You may have been to the Center of the Universe. You maybe didn't know it.
Fair enough. That's okay. I never knew it. I like that.
We're emphatically telling the world that you're the Center of the Universe, right?
That's right. I like that. So far, this is going great.
Yeah, right on. All right, I guess we should mention that we were introduced to each other over email or text by my lifelong friend, Rob Dull, who is one of my top 5 guys for getting me guests. And how did you and Rob run into each other?
You know, I do some athletic work at St. Gertrude High School, and I was working a volleyball game, and he was an official in the game, and you know, we sort of started talking a little bit. Some of my role is communicating with him in terms of points and what to look out for, how many timeouts are left, and you know, in breaks and timeouts and between sets, we just kind of struck up a conversation, and he sort of said, "Hey, I've got this buddy, and he has this podcast," and I said, well, that you are assuming a lot that your friend might want to talk to me, but I said, go ahead, let's give it a try. So yeah, it was great. We had a great conversation and easy to talk to. I can understand why he's a great resource for you.
Yeah, he's a really good guy, great guy. In fact, he got excited because he knows I love sports. You're a coach. I imagine you play a lot of sports coming up. In fact, I think you told me you played at the collegiate level. We'll dive into that a bit. You're a lawyer, which I find interesting. At least you have a law degree, right?
Right. Yeah, I have my law degree. Yeah.
Yeah. Not using it at the moment, at least not directly.
Correct.
We'll talk about that as well. And he mentioned that you were on some cooking contest or baking contest with some names that are fairly well known in the Richmond area.
Yeah, no, it was again, I feel like I've had some opportunities fall into my lap. And I was able to participate in a coach's cook-off last year. It was a fundraiser for Commonwealth Autism, an organization that really is important to me. They look to find employment for adults with autism, and one of the places that they have is Good Foods Grocery, right over the bridge near the Trader Joe's Plaza. But I was able to be alongside a professional chef here in the Richmond area with the likes of the Virginia State head women's coach, Coach Mooney, and Ryan Odom. So I was sort of the low man on the totem pole at the event, but it was a fantastic time. They raised a ton of money, and I just feel really, really strongly about everything that they're doing, and you know, sort of this inclusive environment, and you know, welcoming these people with open arms. It was one of the best nights. It really was.
So there's an additional reason I will enjoy talking to you. My wife is an instructional assistant at the elementary age level for kids with autism. She's been doing it for several years, and she started out of college, doing social work, helping adults who have struggles that a typical person doesn't even have to think about.
Right.
And so, yeah, she's got a big heart. Sounds like you do, and lots of other folks involved in that charity. And the last thing I'll say is, you and I both married Italian Americans.
I know, gosh. I always, let me tell you, my maiden name is Juskowitz. A Polish Catholic. My family's from Chicago, and I always said growing up, I am going to marry a Smith or a Jones. So if there's a Smith or a Jones, you know, my husband would love it if I told everybody I'm interviewing for a second husband. So, you know, maybe in my next lifetime.
So wait a minute, your full name, because I imagine your maiden name is now your middle.
It actually isn't. I dropped it. There's not enough spaces on those forms that you have to fill out. So I just got rid of it. But it would have been Juskowitz D'Onofrio.
Only in the northeastern part of the country is that a problem.
Exactly right. Apostrophes and vowels. That's what we got. And a Z. So
wait a minute. You dropped your maiden name because of filling out government forms?
Yeah, you never know. I figured I didn't want TSA to give me a hard time. I've got the apostrophe already. It was just going to make things too difficult. You know, my dad understood once he saw the vowels and the apostrophe. So he was supportive of it.
That's one of the best stories I've heard in a while. Oh my gosh. I've never had to worry about that. I literally have just 15 letters across my entire name.
Very lucky. You're very lucky.
Oh man. All right. So your family's from Chicago, but you grew up in Jersey, right?
That's right. Yeah. My parents moved when I was, they were pregnant with me. So I grew up in Northwestern New Jersey in a small county, Sussex County, real farmland, rural, sort of country, kind of the New Jersey that everybody talks about, the Jersey Shore, or, even the Hobokens or Jersey cities outside of Manhattan was not my experience growing up. I went to, a Catholic elementary and middle school, and then on to the co-ed Catholic high school there, Pope John the 23rd, and stayed there until I went off to college and went to school, and then moved just a little bit further east to Morris County, which neighbors, it's a little bit closer to the city, to New York City, once I graduated law school and started working and met my husband and everything. But we've only been in Richmond since, let's see, my oldest is 6, so maybe 11 years, I think we've been in Richmond. So yeah, just, I feel like we've been here our whole lives though. It's been a great transition for us.
It's a pretty neat town. And I'm a spokesperson for this part of the world. I'm a huge fan of this part of the world for lots of reasons. But why have you stayed for 11 years?
Oh my gosh. I feel like when we came down here, there was this immediate community. Like there's just a tremendous community, mostly established through our church, and our girls, my 2 daughters, were at St. Bridget's School in the city. And that was right down the road. We lived in the city. We now live in Henrico County, but just really great people who are welcoming. Everything around us that, affordable housing, the restaurant scene, location to big cities. It sort of had everything. I mean, a lot of my family was here too. So that made it easier for me, particularly my husband, his parents were alive when we moved. So it was a little bit of an emotional struggle just leaving them. But our kids just found great areas to grow in athletics and community and schools. We just love it. We love the weather. I mean, don't get me wrong. I want one snow day a year, particularly like on a Friday, that would always be nice, but I'm not really a winter person. I was in cold climates for my schooling and everything. And I just kind of was over that. So I love it here. I love everything Richmond has to offer. It's beautiful. People are wonderful. It's just been great to us.
You gave a much better answer than I've ever given, and I've answered that question thousands of times. My short answer is people are really nice. People are slower. It's slower here. Not that people are slower, but it's just a slower cadence here. It's affordable. You almost get 4 seasons. Winter's not as much a thing as it was 35 years ago, but one snow day, I'm with you. Move on winter. But my concise answer is, look, you go to the west, you're an hour and a half from the mountains. You look to the east, you're 2 hours from the beach, or an hour and 15 minutes from a river. And rivers in Virginia are really cool. We're not the only state that has rivers like we do, but river life is pretty cool. And then you look to the north, the 2 most significant things that happened in our country in terms of wartime were the Revolutionary War, Civil War, and they all basically happened here. Now, obviously, there are exceptions. There's, I guess, Massachusetts was involved a bit, and Delaware and New Jersey a bit, but there's a lot of Revolutionary War action here, and Civil War. Half the battles were fought in Virginia.
Yeah, no, it really is. It's for a history lover. It's been a dream. I mean, it really has been awesome. And talk about the river. It reminds me, I don't know if I told you this, but my dad, when we moved here, my dad lived down in Whitestone. So right on the Rappahannock. So we were there I think he lived in his house for 16 years. He just moved to Richmond, a couple miles away from us. He sold his river house. So we spent 16 summers, years really on the river. So that life that's like our dream. That's like where we're going to end up is down at the river. And that is nothing like I've ever experienced. Before moving here, or before my dad moving here, never knew anything about it. Obviously knew about Virginia Beach and everything, but I mean, it is us and my kids, our favorite place to be, for sure.
Well, it's brackish water. It's really salt water, especially Whitestone. because I think you're 7 miles from the bay, so it's definitely salt water, which brings oysters, it brings blue crabs, it brings fish that you're not going to find in freshwater lakes. If you tell me you're going to get a half bushel or a bushel of blue crabs, and I get to spend the next 5 hours just picking crabs, I'm
Exactly. We used to do that. We would have a crab weekend down at his house, and, my cousins and everybody, we would come down and you just spread the newspaper, and, everybody's fingers are sore at the end because they've got all the cuts and everything. But oh my gosh, such good memories. It's awesome. If you haven't done it, it's just, you have to experience it to really understand it, because it is amazing. It's such a great place to be. And the people, the style of life down there, it's just easy living. It really is.
Yeah, it's river time, which means people are generally very relaxed. That also means that if you want to get something done at your house by a plumber or an electrician, it's going to take than a couple of days. That's
exactly right. That's true. You take the good with the bad.
Yeah, absolutely. All right. So what was it like growing up where you grew up?
It was great. I loved it. I had a great, I grew up, like I said, it was rural, and, I wasn't in a neighborhood per se, but there were a lot of kids around where we were. And my brother and I, have many memories of playing manhunt and, trick-or-treating. And back in the day, I'm sure, mischief night, or my grandma used to call it goosey night, where you toilet paper your neighbor. It was innocent back then, but it was beautiful. It was really great. We had a swimming pool in our backyard. It was just really a lot of outdoor living, much like it is here in Richmond. It was a great upbringing. I loved it. Things just have changed though, where we were, just the cost of living and everything was really high. And my husband, believe it or not, grew up in the same one town over from me. We never knew each other. We went to the same elementary school, same high school, but we were 12 years apart. So we never knew each other. And he always makes like a creepy joke that he went to check me out on the playground when he was in high school. And it's kind of weird to think about, but everything's fine now. But
you're married with kids. So
right, exactly. Everything's legal, nothing, there's no problems, no bumps, no bumps in that road. But no, we loved it. And Joe, my husband's parents, lived there until they passed away, where he grew up. I mean, it's a beautiful, beautiful part of the country as well. Not that traditional, New Jersey that you hear about. It really has a lot of the natural beauty and everything.
Yeah, you could have been in most of New York or Pennsylvania or Virginia and I hesitate to say Virginia because I literally, and I've married a Catholic. I have 3 Catholic children now, but I only knew one Catholic kid growing up. There's only one Catholic family that I ever interacted with. So Catholics were a Maryland and North sort of thing.
Gotcha. Yeah. Yeah, by us, it was definitely prominent, but also, things were so different then with, you stayed like in your circle of people. So you sort of had your school friends, which, most of whom happened to be Catholic because you were at a Catholic school and everything. But yeah, it just wasn't, there definitely wasn't the exposure to the, different, thoughts and practices like there is now. I mean, I think kids these days have a great advantage of kind of learning a little bit more outside the box than I did. That's for sure. I was in a little bubble for sure, but it was great. It was a good bubble. It was a healthy bubble. It was good people. It was great. It was definitely a great experience. I think my brother would say the same thing.
Yeah, there's the way my kids have grown up, it feels like information overload, but I'd rather them have more information than less. It's part of how they become worldly. It's how they become contributing citizens in their communities. And so, yeah, I'm all for it. But yeah, if you grew up in a good bubble, what's not to like about that too?
Right. Exactly. Right. Exactly.
You mentioned Manhunt. I never played Manhunt. How does Manhunt work?
Oh my gosh. It's like, you're like on a wild goose chase. You're just out. It's essentially outdoor hide and seek. Like it was. And I think about it now. And if my kids were like, hey, we're going to go out at 8:00 at night in the pitch black and just like run around with our neighbors. And I'm talking like, there was probably easily a half-mile radius that you're running through. Oh, I mean, yeah, no, it makes absolutely no sense other than you're just outside and, you're listening for sounds and everything. Cause like I said, not a lot of traffic. So you could hear everything. Yeah, it was just a big hide and go seek game, like in all the neighbors' yards and everything. It was crazy.
So hide and go seek, even number of people on each team, the way I played it growing up. Is that basically how Manhunt worked?
Yep. Yeah. Teams. Exactly right. Yeah. You had 2 teams and you were looking to not get discovered. There were no flashlights or anything either. I kind of don't remember how like one group, like you were kind of always moving and in pursuit. So I guess it wasn't the traditional, you go and you find somewhere and you stay there. Like it was just almost you're running through the dark of night to not get caught. I mean, it makes kind of not any sense, but it was a lot of fun if I remember it.
We played a similar game. I won't go into the details of it, but your eyes do adjust to whatever stars are out and the moon's bright. Great. You can actually see well enough to avoid really hurting yourself. But sometimes you're going to run into bushes and small
100%.
trees.
Yep.
Fun things.
Absolutely. Lots of scrapes. That's for sure.
All right. When you were in high school, what would your friends say about you? How would they describe you?
Oh, probably the goof-off, athletic goof-off. I was always looking to make a joke in class. I was sort of an average student. Like I was not, I wasn't a problem or anything like that, but I was always looking to make people laugh and be an imbecile and, cared a lot more about sports than I did about my classwork and stuff like that. But, just a really nice, I had a really great group of friends, all of whom I'm still friends with now, which is again, another advantage of that bubble that we talked about. It's the same for me. My brother, we all went to the same school, and my husband, like I said, went to the same school, and all of us, our entire wedding party is made up of kids that we went to high school with. So, I was definitely not academically driven, but did enough to get by goof off, probably.
For high school, did that persist into college?
No, not at all. I went to college and I was nose to the grindstone. I was the president of the student senate. I was the captain of the basketball team for 2 years. I was so focused and driven. It was that time that I was thinking about wanting to go to law school. And I also because I played basketball in college and at a small Division III school, but your time management had to be so tight. And I had a really good, despite my goofing off in high school and everything, it was a rigid curriculum and it was a difficult high school to go to. So I went to college and I was far better prepared than my classmates. And I did great. I was a very good student in college. I was motivated. I was focused. I was still goofy. I still am an idiot a lot. I still am today. But no, I was very, very, very driven and results driven. So no, I think I grew up a lot. I think I had to. I was put in a situation. I was 6 hours from home and, you kind of had to figure it out. So no, I excelled in undergrad and had a great experience there as well.
Was there a switch that flipped, or was it a gradual progression towards being more serious about things?
I don't remember there being like the proverbial switch, but I remember feeling like I was there and had a purpose. Like I felt really fortunate to be able to play basketball. Because I look back now and I look at the different, how much athletes have grown, with for a variety of reasons, trainers, AAU and all that kind of stuff. And I never did any of that. But I remember feeling really lucky to have that opportunity. And I also remember being in a small school. I had a lot of individual attention. I remember, very vividly some of my professors and advisors who took an interest in me and were, saw something in me. And so they fed that, and maybe I didn't want to disappoint them. Didn't want to disappoint my dad. Here I am, like trying to make something of myself, but I don't remember I think it was like a combination of a few things. And people bought into me and I felt obligated to perform and obligated to sort of do my best.
Excuse me. It's good to have people in your life like that. Absolutely.
Yeah, no, I've been really lucky, really lucky.
Yeah. Humans are weird. It's easier to let ourselves down than it is to let somebody that we care about.
I know. Isn't that, I still remember actually growing up and, doing something stupid, and I'd be like, "Oh, are you mad at me?" He'd say, "No, I'm just disappointed." I'm like, "No, that's worse. Be mad. No."
Yeah. Cool. What was it about basketball that you wanted to play at the collegiate level?
I went between I played softball my whole life. I played softball since I was in first grade, and I was a catcher, and I was actually pretty decent. And I thought that was what I was going to do. And, a coach recruited me from where I went to undergrad. And I kind of was like, well, I guess I'll just do that. I mean, I loved the game. And really, I had a coach in high school who I'm still in contact with today. She retired, gosh, probably 2 years after I graduated, so 1999. And she was one of those people, like I said, in college that had, high expectations for me, and not necessarily as a skill player, but being a leader on the court. And, I felt like I was given an opportunity to be able to play on at the next level. And, I sort of say to even my players now that I have, some of them waver, whether they, sometimes I think people think, oh, Division III is not that big of a deal. And I'm like, having the opportunity to play college athletics beyond where you are right now is an opportunity of a lifetime. And I encourage everybody that I coach that can play to do it, because it just, I don't know, it just brought so much to my life. I met a lot of people that I liked. I met a lot of people I didn't like. I had coaches that I liked. I had coaches that I didn't like, and I remember all that time, my dad would always tell me, like, sometimes you're always looking for affirmative answers in life. Like, what should I do? But sometimes finding out what you shouldn't do is more important. And, I think basketball gave me just even more opportunities to be able to do that. So it was a much faster decision than it is now. There wasn't, I wasn't recruited by, 100 schools or anything like that. It was kind of, okay, I went there, I went for the visit. It seems great. Let's just do it.
Let's talk about girls softball, high school level. We can talk about collegiate level too if you want. But I have a sports podcast that's separate from this, and we get a chance to talk to athletes at various levels, but a fair number of high school athletes. And I was fortunate enough to meet Marley and Chris Gaskell, a daughter and dad duo. And Marley's going to Florida State to play, and she was playing my kids' high school. And I'm like, well, I don't live far from there. I'll come check Marley out. She's going to a top 2 or 3 program in the country. I should probably go check it out, especially if she's going to be on our sports podcast with her dad. I went to watch, and I'm like, I was mesmerized by a couple of things. How fast everything is.
Right.
And then I was mesmerized by Marley's changeup. She has the most ridiculous changeup I've ever seen in baseball or softball. It's a crazy pitch. But anyway, I think softball, fast pitch softball, and look, I played baseball through high school. I think maybe significantly more entertaining than baseball.
It's unbelievable, because like you said, that some of these pitchers, and I am really lucky now because I work with our athletic director really closely. So I have the chance to kind of manage games. And so I watch a lot of these players, and I think you're absolutely right. So many things. It's an action-packed game. Like, it really is. Like baseball, if you get a good pitcher in there, they're probably going to have 18 strikeouts and the game's going to be over. And that's great. That's great for the pitcher and everything. But you go to some of these competitive softball games and you have, a pitcher duel going on, but then you've got people they're capable of so much more. They're slap hitting, they're bunting, they're running bases so much smarter than I ever did. I mean, I work with our athletic trainer at St. Gertrude and Benedictine. Her daughter, she's just bred these insane athletes. Her daughter is at Trinity Episcopal, and she's the Division I state player of the year for field hockey this year. She's going to play at Syracuse. And then she's got a set of twins who are in 8th grade. And her son is a great football player. He's played with our Benedictine Middies programs for years. But her daughter, Cooper, she's an 8th grader. This child, I remember when I first met our trainer, Brandy, great woman. And my daughter's into softball. I thought, oh, great. I used to be a catcher, trying to relate. And, at that time, this was years ago, Cooper's, in third grade or fourth grade or anything. And I'm like watching her throw to Brandy, our trainer, on the side. And I'm like, this child is in eighth grade right now. And she's going, she's traveling all over, going to these tournaments and everything. I'm like, I never saw that when I was in high school, and you're in eighth grade. I mean, it's just, it's amazing how much these girls are able to do on the softball field. And I think it's great. I think it's great because, I think softball for a while, like you said, used to kind of be this boring sport. You'd sit in the stands and you're like, oh my gosh, let's just pick the dandelions and get out of here. And it's become so exciting now. I agree with you. I love it.
Yeah, I think it's becoming as popular, if not more popular, during collegiate playoffs. I don't know about as much about the high school level, but college playoffs for softball are, I think, as well attended and well watched on TV as baseball. Maybe better, actually.
It is. No, I agree with you. I love watching Oklahoma's always in it, Florida State, like you said, Florida, all these schools, Texas, that I'm like, oh my gosh, these girls are just dynamic. They really are just great athletes.
Yeah. And look, you played softball, you know how hard it is to hit a softball coming at you that fast from that short of a distance. And the pitcher has anywhere from 5 to 8 pitches.
Exactly. Like you just, I think about it now, and I don't know if it's because I'm getting older or they're getting faster or what, but I'm like, gosh, I wear glasses now. I can't see anything. Like I would throw my back out just swinging a bat right now, like it's amazing what these kids are capable of. It really is.
So, all right, let's talk about why law school. What was the idea of going to law school?
Oh gosh. I thought I was going to change the world. I thought I was going to go and, I knew I wanted to get a degree beyond, my undergrad degree. I wanted to be able to have some career opportunities. And I took a couple classes in undergrad that were law-based, mostly criminal law and criminal procedure based. And that's the fun stuff, in terms of, learning about what these TV shows are about. Right. So that was always exciting. And I thought, well, maybe I'll do something business related. So, I went on and I went to law school at Syracuse University. And it's interesting with law school, when you get there, there's like this very pronounced pecking order. Like you're either at the top of the class, like the top 10%, right? And you are part of something called Law Review, which is like this big journal that only the best students write for and contribute to. And I very quickly learned that I wasn't going to be one of those, right? Like you're just in this pool with really, really bright people who are 24/7 doing their work and everything. And my first year at Syracuse happened to be the year that they won the national championship. So, I was eating in the same places as Carmelo Anthony and Jerry McNamara, and I was a little distracted. The law school is right next to the Carrier Dome, and I had season tickets. So I decided, well, I'm going to be good enough, but I'm not going to be on Law Review. So, I started off and it was grueling. I mean, it was really tough. The classes, the professors, expectation, burnout. It was hard. I mean, it was really hard when I got there. And, I don't necessarily think anyone likes law school, so I'm not going to lie and say that I did. But I knew that my end goal was to graduate. Like I was going to finish what I started. And so I did. That was sort of, I had some great friends and again, great professors and everything. And I figured out a lot of what I didn't want to do. And what I didn't want to do was what I thought I was going to do when I went there was the business avenue. I actually ended up finishing, getting my MBA through my undergrad. Right after law school, I did a little bit simultaneous because I thought, okay, I'm going to go, do partnership or corporate or something like that. And that you ask about like defining moments. And I knew I had a defining moment when I was in partnership tax. That was the class I was in. And, one of the books you had to buy, because this was the book age, not digital, was the tax code. And the federal tax code was this thick and tiny print. and it sucked. And I'm like, I don't think that this is for me. But again, it was one of those, moments. I remember my dad was like, well, now you know what you don't want to do. So, yeah, I finished that and sort of got a really great opportunity after I graduated to clerk for the presiding criminal court judge in Morristown, New Jersey. So just just east of where I lived. And, I love to tell stories about all the judges that I worked with, but the one that I worked for particularly, Salem Vincent Otto, he's probably, gosh, he's got to be close to 85 right now, still smart as a whip. I see him every time we go back to New Jersey, just a really good guy. Was another one of those people that was put in my life. Like, he made my life hell that year that I was there. But I learned so much, and I learned so much about people and lawyers and defendants. It was one of the most, consequential experiences of my life. Like, I am so lucky. Like, I think that was probably the most pivotal, like, life experience I had as a young adult, was getting that clerkship after law school.
Yeah, and you probably learned a lot more in that clerkship than you did in law school. Yeah, every lawyer I know, they tell me about their law school experience. I'm like, none of that sounds fun at all.
It's awful. It's awful. It's honestly like, and this is so over dramatic, and I don't mean this. So if any Navy SEALs are listening, but it's like, they want you to ring the bell. They want you, like, not physically, but mentally and emotionally and academically, they want you to ring the bell. And they challenge you, and it gets you prepared. A lot of my friends who are in practice in big firms and stuff, it's a rat race. It's hard. It's hard work. None of which I wanted to be a part of after I graduated, but no, law school is awful. It's awful. I actually have two of the girls that I coach. One is in law school right now, and one is going to law school in August. She deferred her admission this year. So I was very upfront with them. They reached out to me, and I talked to them a lot about what to expect. But it's one of those challenges that you have to go through. You gotta, if this is what you want to do, you gotta weather the storm.
Yeah, when you think back to the storm, you're like, I'm glad I did that. I'm glad I'm not living it now, though.
Correct. Absolutely. It's like having a newborn, right? Like, how did I survive those days? And you just did. Like, it makes you stronger in the end.
Yeah, I have no idea what that experience is like. Probably. I was there.
Right.
But
yeah.
I think
I'll ask your wife about that.
Did you take the Jersey bar?
I did. Yeah, I did. And I never passed it. And when I was doing my clerkship, I had the opportunity to go and work at the prosecutor's office. And they had a provision where I was able to, quote, practice under a supervising attorney. And so I was able to work with the assistant prosecutors that were there. And then when a new prosecutor came in, I got this promotion. I was the director of finance and public relations because he knew I had my MBA and everything. And so it was another one of those opportunities that I got that I'm like, I don't want to say I loved every minute of it, because I felt like I was on call 24/7 with the media stuff, but it was sort of one of those things that, pulled me away from this feeling that, like, I knew I didn't really want to be a lawyer anymore, but I felt this pressure to pass the bar exam, and I didn't, after I graduated law school. And I sort of took this other career path, and I was really lucky to be able to do that, because it took so much of the pressure off of me to sort of do what I was supposed to do. You know what I mean? So it was a blessing for sure.
You can learn more about yourself in failure than you can in success.
Absolutely. Absolutely.
But I was the process. So my dad is a retired lawyer, mm-hmm. and I've had him on this podcast, and I said, what was it like waiting for the whether you passed or failed? And he said, back then, because he graduated law school, I think in the early mid 70s, he said you had to wait for the I think it was the newspaper.
Oh, wow. Okay. Yeah.
And it's like, I'm going through the newspaper, and I don't remember exactly. It wasn't alphabetical. It was something different, but you had to check out the newspaper that morning and hope your name was above the line kind of thing.
Right. No, and that was the same experience. It was digital. It wasn't individually released to you, if I remember correctly, but you had to check. And I can't remember. I could be making this up, but I feel like you had like an identification number, so you could see. But then they eventually would post the names, so people you took it like you knew, if you had friends and stuff, like who passed and who didn't pass, and it was awful. It was awful because you took it at the end of July, and I think if I remember correctly, results came out in maybe like November. So it was awful. You sort of like the month of August, usually everybody went on vacation before they started their job. So life was good because you were in denial. And then you were like, oh my gosh, my future, my life, everything I worked for is waiting for me. And it was awful. It was not fun. I have the same experience, just not on the newspaper.
Yeah, I wonder if there's a better way to do that. We're not going to solve it tonight, but there has to be a better way. So it's not, that level of anxiety over that period of time seems ridiculous.
Right. No, it's brutal. It's brutal. I agree.
All right. So your dream of being a lawyer and changing the world ended. And then you got into business endeavors?
No, I did the public relations and finance, and I did that until I had kids. And then I stayed home for, probably 9 years, I would say. So I stayed home for 9 years. And when it was time to go back to work, I had a friend who knew somebody, and I got a job at University of Richmond in finance. And it was like one of those things. I remember all my girlfriends were like, did you ever see the movie Devil Wears Prada?
Yes.
Yeah. And it's like the idea that anybody would kill for this job, right? Like, so here I am, I take a 9-year hiatus and I get a job at the University of Richmond in finance, the most beautiful campus. You can't go wrong. I worked with these wonderful people. I hated every minute of it. I sat there and I sat at a desk, and it was in the Office of Planning and Budget, and
that sounds like a fun place, Robyn.
Oh gosh, it was brutal. I sat there and I remember thinking, like, besides like my suite mates, I had like 4 people in my office who were lovely, loved all of them, loved my boss. I had no value. Like, I was like, I'm, no offense, University of Richmond, but it's like, you're just making a rich university richer. Like there was no interaction with people besides the people I worked with. Like there was no feel good part of my day. And I stayed there for about a year, and then was like, okay, I got to try something different. And again, my kids were still young in school, so I wasn't looking for anything like full-time. So I went and I got I don't know if it's called licensed or whatever, but I became a basketball official. Mm-hmm. You go through a class, it's like, 8 or 10 weeks or something. You go to a class and you go to trainings and camps and all this stuff. And I officiated high school basketball for probably 3 years, I would say. And it got to the point where I was like, well, I'm tired of getting yelled at all the time. First of all, I kind of had the personality where I wanted to turn around and be like, hey, idiot, this is the rule, and you can't obviously do that. And I decided I wanted to be a basketball coach. And I thought to myself, somebody who had, probably the biggest impact on me besides my dad and my grandmother growing up was my high school basketball coach, Bonnie Lewis. And I was like, I want to be like her. I want to reach people like she reached me. But I also knew that I couldn't be an assistant coach. So, well, who the heck goes in and is like, hey, I have no coaching experience whatsoever, but I want to be a head varsity coach. Well, I had somebody who believed what I wanted to say. One of my deepest, closest friends to this day, who sort of gave me a chance when, probably no one ever would have. Bruce Seacrest. He's the athletic director at the Steward School. and he's been there forever. He's the baseball coach. He just had the field named in honor of him in the last couple of years. Just salt of the earth, kind, loving person. And he's like, you want to be a coach for the right reason. Like, we'll figure this out. And he gave me the job. And I'm like,
Wow.
yeah. I mean, I had no business getting that job, but he believed in me. Like, I just went into him and told him like my truth. I'm like, look, I have nothing to offer you except that I know that I want to make an impact on these girls. Like I was fortunate enough to do. Like, I don't think there's enough people out there that want to do that. And he bought into me, and he gave me an opportunity. And I am forever grateful for that. And that was like the beginning, was him just opening up his heart and trusting me.
How long ago was that?
Sorry?
How long ago was that?
Let's see. I've been at St. Gertrude. I think this is my 7th year. So that was 9 years ago. Yeah. Yeah. No. Well, yeah. 9 years ago, 8 years ago, eight years ago, maybe. Yeah.
Okay. Well, let's go back to the comment you made about 9 years raising children.
Yeah.
Did you love those 9 years and wish you could go back, or you're like,
not at all? Not at all. The days are long, but the years are short. No, it was, it's a mixed bag, right? Like, and anybody who's a parent knows that it was the most thankless job. But I am so grateful, especially now that they're, one's almost driving, one's, it's easy to say, we had some great times, but it was hard. It was the hardest job I ever had. I think that being a parent is the hardest job. That continues to be the hardest job that I have. But I feel really fortunate that I was able to do that. I mean, my husband worked, and, when we moved to Virginia, I had a lot of help from my family members that are close by. But I'm so grateful. I'm so grateful that I was able to invest that time in them and in their schools. And, but it was hard. It was really, 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 really hard, to be on all the time. But I'm glad I did it. I wouldn't change it. I definitely wouldn't change it. I mean, I definitely, we like to talk about, I talk in my government class, I teach government at St. Gertrude High School, and we talk about, women, there's a lot of debate about, whether women are compensated enough for their jobs, in the mommy track. A lot of people do what I did, which is leave and come back and, playing that catch up game. And, there's so many pros and cons to all of it, but I just really feel lucky that I was able to do it. And, I find myself in a place now that I feel such validation, and I feel like it makes up for all those years when I sometimes didn't feel validated. So wiping nose and picking up toys.
Yeah, I think somehow subconsciously your kids appreciate it. They may not always express it the way you would like, or as consistently as maybe.
Right.
Best part of coaching and not so fun part of coaching.
The not so fun part's easy. This is the parents.
Parents.
Yeah, I hate to say it, because let me preface that with, I have great parents. I have had, some of the most fantastic parents that I am, I go to comedy shows with. I have families that are still come to see me after their children have graduated. I have grandparents. One of my players' grandfathers was at all of her games, and he still comes to support us. She's graduated playing at Randolph-Macon. So I have some of the best parents, but, parents can really, if they're not online and in, buying into what you're trying to sell, it makes it really difficult. So that's tough. But the best part of the girls, the best part is the calls when, they're going to law school, or the calls because they have a problem, they're crying, and you're one of the first people they call. That's by far the best, the friendships that they have with each other. And, it's a cliche, but the light, I always tell them, like, this is life. Like, we may be talking about basketball in a scenario, but like everything that we're doing is to prepare you for life. Like, you've got to work harder because people that you're going to go to college with are going to work hard, and you have to push each other and be dependable and loyal and hardworking and confident, because that's how you have to be in the classroom, in the boardroom, and all of those things. So I have had such, I have gained so much more than I have given those girls by far. They have made my life better in remarkable ways. So the relationships are by far the best part, by far.
I imagine what I'm about to say is true. As the varsity head basketball coach, you have a program that goes down to what, 8th or 9th grade, 7th grade, maybe?
So we have a couple of middies programs that run through our school, and our high school is just 9th through 12th. But our school, Benedictine Schools of Richmond, runs a middle school league at our gym. So I have the opportunity to interact with a lot of the kids that are at the mostly at the Catholic and the private schools that come to our gym to to play in their games on Saturday mornings and stuff. So it's a nice opportunity to see the younger kids, and we encourage our players to go and support them. There's nothing like these little kids seeing high school girls at their basketball games. I mean, that's like, you think that they've seen a celebrity. So we interact a lot with that, but our school, St. Gertrude's, only 9th through 12th. So we just have a JV team and a varsity team at our school.
But you get to see these kids play from middle school age all the way up through their senior years. And I imagine you get some satisfaction in watching the level of improvement of basketball skill, their ability to be good teammates, and watching them mature.
Yeah, no, that has been, it sounds, that some of my girls will roll their eyes at me when I get a little sentimental, but, I have a girl this year, she's a senior, and she'd kill me for saying this out loud for people to hear. But I remember when she came, as a freshman. It was the summer before her freshman year, and she came to an open gym that I was having. And she came in there, and she was this tiny, tiny, tiny little thing. I'm talking 5 feet tall, and just the cutest little thing, had these braces and just adorable. And she was not a strong basketball player. I mean, she was not a strong basketball player. I remember and I've told her this since, so she knows this. I told her at the time, I thought, oh man, I feel bad for the JV coach. He's got a lot of work to do. That child, that was in June. That child came to tryouts in November. And everything, kids sometimes their parents tell them, right? This goes back to the parent thing. Their parents tell them, well, make sure you ask the coach what you need to do to improve. And this girl, Katie, her name's Katie, always did that every day after open gym. What can I do to improve? And I would give her, a laundry list of things. You got to work. You got to do this. That kid came back in November, still 5 feet tall, still tiny with braces. And she worked her butt off. She worked on everything I told her to work on. And she came to tryouts, and I looked at her, and I didn't really talk to her at school, the first semester and everything. She's a freshman. I didn't have a lot of interaction with her because she wasn't going to be on varsity anyway. And she came to tryouts. And I'm watching her, and I'm watching her, and I'm watching her. And she was small, but she was mighty. And I had to take her. I took her as my 10th player on varsity as a freshman. Wow. And I told her, and I talked to her, and I talked to her parents. And again, you talk about parents who are invested and who are doing everything you hope, parents are doing, which is reinforcing the message that the coach is saying, and I talked to her, and I said, Katie, you will probably never see the floor this year, but I see something in you. And I think you can be a really big part of our program. But it's going to require you to work a lot, and you're going to be unhappy a lot, and you're going to be disappointed because you're going to sit on the bench for games on end. But I see something in you. And, I told her parents the same thing. I remember having a conversation with her mom before I talked to her. I said, are you going to be okay with that? And her mom said to me, I remember, whatever you think is best is what we're going to do. Well, that kid right now is a senior this year and is one of my starters and has been a captain for the last 2 years. And if I asked her to, to push a pencil with her nose across the floor, she would do it. And she has been a role model to so many kids and it has now become an asset, right? Like she's not just a leader. She's not just cute little Katie who would get in there her freshman year and the whole gym would cheer because she was this little petite thing. Like I told you, she's sort of been like, probably like the greatest summation of everything that I want my program to be remembered for. Like not the great players. I've had tons of great players who have done wonderful things for our program, but somebody who has bought in and weathered the storm and gone through the highs and the lows and the tears and the huge moments, and all of it comes together. And if you buy in and if you can work through adversity, like there are so many great things come from this. She's not going to play college basketball. She's really strong academically and she's going to go on. But, I think if you asked her probably her greatest high school memory is basketball. And that's what I want every one of my players to experience. I hope they love it as much as I do.
2 questions. Is she still 5 feet tall?
Maybe 5'2".
Okay. And will she listen to this?
Probably when my daughter, who's probably eavesdropping right now, tells her that my mom was talking about you on the podcast, she probably will. Yeah, they're all going to find it. Are you kidding me? The second they know, they're all going to find it and they're all going to listen. So yeah. I love all of you. I was talking about Katie, but I love all of you.
Yeah, we only have an hour and 15 minutes. We're not going to be able to talk about all the players. But yeah, Katie's story is awesome, right? You put your nose to the grindstone and you get better. You get a lot better, and it expands into non-basketball things like how to be a leader.
Yep.
Yeah, that's a great story. All right, you mentioned teaching government.
Yeah.
Teaching government the first 3 months of the fall semester had to be interesting. Tell me what that experience is like for the teacher, and then your view of what it may have been like for the kids.
Yeah, no, I always, I've taught 2 election years now, 2020 and this one. So I remember saying back in 2020, like on election day, prayers up for us government teachers, because it's like nothing we've ever seen before. So, the best way that I can put teaching government to it, because it's an all-girls Catholic school, and it's small class size. I think I have 24 in one class and 16 in the other. So small groups of girls who are so knowledgeable and curious to learn. So they will come in and ask questions all the time. So I think that's been the case every year that I've taught government. But in particular, in this election year and with social media, they were really trying to identify the truths of what the candidates were saying. So we had great discussions about, news media and messages that are delivered and how you receive messages and how social media platforms sort of narrowcast this information and they pump this information. They're sort of fascinated by the idea that they're being manipulated by a lot of online platforms, in a way that, like, oh my gosh, that makes sense. I sort of give it in non-government terms. Like I say to them, like, if you are on, Twitter or whatever, X, whatever we call it now, and you like, the New York Knicks, you're going to get feeds that support the New York Knicks. Like if you like something on Instagram about, these kids love this crap, this makeup stuff, these girls, if you like that, that's all you're going to get pumped. I said, so if you think about that from a political standpoint, if you show an affinity for whether it's a candidate or an ideology or an organization, they're going to continue to give you information. And what that does is it isolates you from the other side of the story. So, I try to really open their eyes to what is in front of them. And I pride myself. I think that all my students from every year that I've ever taught, they ask me all the time, what are your political beliefs? And I say, I'll never tell you. And they say, when we graduate, will you? And I said, no, because I don't want you to tell anybody else. But I pride myself on teaching the girls how to think instead of what to think. I just don't, I believe very, very confidently in our democracy. And I think that, a lot of Americans have strayed away from that confidence. And I'm hopeful that this generation will begin to restore that. And I think the only way to do that is to be more open-minded. I think there's very few times where you, in life, when you're talking about these hot button topics and everything, where you can't at least acknowledge that somebody that you disagree with has a point. And I think that that's important. It doesn't mean you change your mind, we've had a lot of discussions about that in our class, that like you can agree with somebody and still feel the way that you do. That's okay. And I think we've gotten away from that as a country, that, we feel this need to be, on these different ends of the spectrum. And the reality is we probably are all a little further towards the middle than we like to admit, because we think that we're somehow relenting in our fight to be right. It's not a fight to be right. It's a fight to do right. So it's been interesting. I mean, it's been a dynamic election season. And the girls have come in so much better informed than I ever was. I mean, I don't know if I wasn't really a history buff when I was young, but I didn't pay attention. I knew who was running. That was about it. And, you got the newspaper, or you turned on the news the next morning and you knew who won, but I didn't know nearly as much as they do now. And, I think like most things, there's good and bad with that, but I've been really lucky to have, diverse opinions from my students, and they were all very professional and very tolerant of one another. It was actually a pleasure. I mean, as much as you get nervous because, each class is different, it was a joy to teach. Like it was actually really fun. I really enjoyed their inquiries and their curiosity to learn and understand. It was actually a really good experience. It was hard sometimes, hard answers, and sometimes you don't have an answer, and you sort of, without trying to lean to one side or the other, have to admit shortcomings that, different sides made that they bring up in class. And I think if you don't admit that, you lose credibility with them. If you're if you say no, both candidates are perfect, both have done no wrong, both look great, they sounded great, they're doing great, they're not dumb, they see this stuff.
Yeah, it's interesting. I like you, I didn't know much about politics coming up, but at my current age and going through 2020 and 2024 like you did as a government teacher, just talking to my friends who have various political beliefs depending on the topic or the issue,
Mm-hmm.
It's amazing how quickly people become emotional.
Yes.
And dig their heels. And I'm like, that's not productive. It's just simply not. And the other thing that's not productive is, and I suffer from this, I know what I'm hearing is different than what I believe. I'm absolutely listening because I owe that to the people that are talking to me. But I don't want to fully share my views on the topic because I don't want to lose the friendship or worsen the friendship. And so, politics can be hard, but they can be discussed in a way that's highly productive for everyone in that conversation.
Yeah, no. And I think you bring up a really great point. And I think that it's been over the last two elections, there has been this divisiveness of because people think differently than you do, that you somehow can't work together. It defies logic to me, because I don't know if I'm just old enough where I don't really care, but people's experience, and the way that I try to explain it to the kids, to the girls at school, is like, you may have a really strong opinion on, whatever the hot button issue is, and somebody may have a diametrically opposed position on that same topic for a very good reason. That doesn't mean you have to change your mind. You don't have that experience. You haven't lived that experience. But it's okay to say, wow, Bill, I think that this is that what you're saying makes a lot of sense based on where you're coming from, right? Like, it doesn't mean that you're like, oh, never mind then. You're right. People have different experiences that shape who they are and how they live their lives. If you can't see that, if you can't understand that, and if you think people are imbeciles for feeling a particular way, you're just losing the opportunity to grow your thought process, and that's happened way too much. And you're right. People are afraid to speak their truth and to speak their opinion, because they're afraid they're going to be either, cut off or accused of, because one line of thinking may mean something in your mind, but it's going to go to the extreme. And well, then you must think this way as well. Well, no, I was talking about this one little compartmentalized area that we were discussing, and it somehow has mushroomed into this huge, analysis that is not what I'm talking about at all. So yeah, it's really difficult. It's awkward. And with the holidays coming up, I mean, it can be uncomfortable for families, for students. Yeah, it's no fun. It's no fun. I don't get it.
Politics have always been kind of a rough and tumble thing. There's stories from 250 years ago, maybe not 250, not quite 250, but 230, 240, where they said some rough things to the other side. Mm-hmm. But I always had the sense as a kid, and even into my early adulthood, that they were at least working together, listening. And I think that still happens today. We just don't have that impression from social media, corporate media, whatever it is.
Yep, I agree. Totally.
Yeah. And so it can be overwhelming for the kids. So I'm glad you give your kids a space to listen to each other and listen to you and share their perspectives. That's because I don't think a lot of kids have that opportunity.
No, I don't think so either. And I think that they're, a lot of them are afraid to speak up, and they're better off keeping their mouth shut in their mind than exposing themselves to ridicule or criticism or questioning, and instead of preparing students to be able to communicate what it is that they feel, they just stay silent. And that's not an answer. That's what grows the divide, is, well, I'm just going to go in my little cocoon and think the way that I think and not talk about it. And that doesn't help anybody.
You know what I think helps? And this is going to sound really strange. Podcasts, and you and I are on one now, but having a long form, hours probably not long enough. It could be, depending on the topic, but 2 or 3 hours where people just let their hair down and have a discussion. It's amazing what you can learn in that discussion. And podcasts are, and I mentioned podcasts, any two people can get together and talk whenever about things, but you're now recording it for others to listen to, and you're having this really broad impact that for most podcasts, I don't think they're trying to manipulate anybody. They're trying to speak their truths and maybe influence in their own way, but they're coming from a good place.
Yeah, for sure. No, absolutely. It's a great resource. Yeah, great resource. And a lot more people are listening to podcasts, so it's a great vehicle to kind of, just get a more broad perspective, for sure.
Absolutely. All right, Robyn, let's talk last two topics. Has your season started? I should have looked this up. Your season started?
Yeah, no, we actually have our first game on Friday. So we went through tryouts and everything already, and we played, we play, basketball has sort of become a year-round sport, and I've been lucky to get the team in with a summer league and a fall league, and we go to summer camp at Liberty University for a long weekend. So we're sort of together all the time, but we officially have our team set, and we play our first game on Friday. So,
what are your thoughts going into the season?
I'm optimistic. I think we're great. I think we have 4 seniors on the team. We've got some great leadership. I have a senior who actually just committed. She signed her letter of intent yesterday to play at Belmont Abbey out in North Carolina. I've got some underclassmen who are sort of figuring out the system. But we play in a competitive conference. We play in the League of Independent Schools, and we're Division I in the state. So it's super competitive. So I feel confident with how strong we are. But there's just great competition all over, and every day is a battle. There's not a lot of games where, you kind of get to relax and get some kids in who don't get a lot of playing time. It's competitive all the time. All the coaches around are great coaches and are looking to build their programs as well. So I'm optimistic, though. I love the girls. They want to work hard. That's kind of, the ball's going to go through the hoop, on some nights better than others. So you can control so much of that, but I'm confident. I'm looking forward to it.
Well, I'll be rooting for you because you were nice enough to come on this podcast.
Oh, thank you.
Yeah. And last topic. Tell me about your family, and you can define family however you want to define it.
Well, the broader family, from the bigger perspective is Benedictine Schools of Richmond, where I work, Benedictine College Prep and St. Gertrude High School. They are, this really great family community, and then my at-home family here. I've got my husband Joe. He's an attorney with the Commonwealth's Attorney's Office in the city of Richmond. And my older daughter, Maddie, she's about to turn 16. She plays for me at St. Gertrude, and that's been a great experience. And I have a 7th grader, Emmy, and she's at St. Bridget's School. I've got my dog, Socks, who everybody knows is probably my favorite child, my little Shih Tzu. And I've got
How do you spell Socks?
So, good question. Good question. You're asking that because of the Chicago thing, aren't you?
Yeah.
No, Socks. She had little white paws. Plus, White Sox. I wouldn't admit it anyway. I would have done a formal name change for her after this past season. So, yeah, no. And, my older brother Jason, he lives with his wife, Rebecca, in New Jersey still. We're very close. And my mom lives in North Carolina, and my dad is my best friend. He lives, like I said, 4 miles from us here in Henrico, and he is at all of our events. He's at really all of any school events, whether it's St. Bridget, St. Gertrude, Benedictine. But I've been really lucky. I've got a great, solid foundation here.
It's been lovely talking to you, Robyn. I really appreciate you doing this. I enjoy talking to people that are getting after it in life, having a positive impact on those around them. And I love talking to people that are smarter than me. So,
oh gosh,
it's not a high bar, Robyn.
Yeah. I was going to take it as a compliment, but
you should take it as a compliment.
No, this was a ton of fun, Paul. I appreciate it. I'm glad we were able to connect.
Thank you for listening. If you enjoyed this episode, please subscribe to wherever you listen to podcasts. We'd also really appreciate if you'd rate and review us. You can find us at scodupodcast.com.